Hi folks, this is all the fruit on the beautiful island of Gran Canaria, back at, maybe the most remote farm I've ever seen on all of the Canary Islands. It's been abandoned probably decades ago, but now it's been kind of restored, I guess. Hikers use it as a sort of mountain chalet or shelter. And also, even hikers enjoy some good fruit. So there are some old and also new fruit trees on this farm. Well, when you look around, this thing looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. And it really is. It's in the west of the island of Gran Canaria, in the giant valley system of Tejeda. In the upper part of the valley system, like starting maybe 10 kilometers in this direction, in a much more favorable climate, slightly cooler and slightly wetter, there are lots of little villages and farms, a lot of them without road access, a lot of them abandoned or semi-abandoned, some of them have been taken over by modern cave dwellers, a lot of them are still being inhabited by traditional cave dwellers in the same way they've been living there for centuries. But here in the lower part of the valley system, you can see it's basically semi-desert. That's why there are basically no human habitations in the lower part of the valley system. This is one of the very notable exceptions. Look, this is a valley. It's hanging many hundred meters below the edges of the highlands, but also many hundred meters above the main valley. Down there is the main valley, the Barranco de Tejeda. This one is hanging basically in the middle, and so it's basically at the limit of what's still inhabitable and tolerable by humans. But here on the Canary Islands, humans have proven for centuries and for millennials that they can live basically everywhere. Why would people come to such remote places? Why did they make such a homestead where the next neighbors are probably 5 kilometers away and the next village is 10 kilometers away? I mean, for places like Siberia or the Wild West in North America, this is quite typical, but for densely populated places like the Canary Islands, this is quite strange. Well, the answer is quite simple. Well, there are many answers, but they're quite simple to understand. First, people were forced to work the most remote and most inhospitable places, forced by their masters, forced to provide at least a little bit of money or cash crops so that their masters could live an incredibly luxurious life while the peasants were starving. And also, for those people, civilization and government and everything basically just meant oppression. The government meant the tax collector who would take their last goat and the last sack of grain. The government meant the military people who would take away their sons. The government meant, taxes, regulations, oppression of every imaginable kind. Basically, for centuries, the people here were worked to death by royal Spain and later by fascist Spain. Actually, the people of the Canary Islands, well into the 1960s, they would stuff several families into tiny fishing boats, not much bigger than 2 cars, and cross the Atlantic without any modern equipment. More than half of them would die, but still it was worth the trouble. And so, people were forced to come to such desolate places, and people also like to stay in such desolate places, far away from any type of civilization. Well, what did they do here? What did they farm here? Their main animals would have been goats, because goats can graze everywhere on those slopes. And in spring there is actually enough greenery to graze. Another cash crop, if you believe it or not, was grain. Grains were grown on the most remote and most dry and steep slopes in the Canary Islands. So I think everything that was not vertical rock, not vertical cliff, was was used for grains. You can find little terraces pretty much everywhere on the slopes around here, and at some time those were used for grains. Here there are a couple big terraces with irrigation where they would have grown vegetables and such stuff, and maybe corn, but on the higher terraces they would have grown wheat, barley, stuff like that. Another cash crop were the cacti. Actually, somebody has planted a couple new cactus gardens here. They would grow lice on the cacti, and those lice produce a red dew. You could dry the lice and transport them quite easily on donkey or mule. That's why this was a much more viable cash crop than the grains, which are quite heavy to transport down here on the back of mules and donkeys. Well, another cash crop were the almonds. The valley system of Tejeda is famous for its almonds, and most of those trees here, most of the little crook trees with the black stems are almond trees, so they would be a major crop for the people here, and also a major cash crop for paying for the little things they need, like metal pots and nails and bottles and stuff like that. This would maybe cover the cash crops they had here, yeah. Goats, cacti, wheat, almonds. But what else did they use here? Well, African slaves taught the people of the Canary Islands to tap the date palms for palm juice, which you would make into palm sugar and palm wine. And since those are Canary date palms, which do not provide good fruit, they were used mostly for that, for providing sugar and alcohol. Those Canary date palms look very, very thin, almost like African date palms, but I checked them all. I didn't find any African date palms, despite the fact that some of them look like they're African date palms. So I guess either it's because of the very poor conditions here, or maybe there are some hybrids with African date palms. But despite the tallest of them looking more or less like African date palms, I'm pretty sure they're Canary date palms or hybrids. So yeah, the palms were used, the Canary date palms, probably they had a couple of African date palms around here. The agave was used for fibers, for ropes and clothing, also for making alcohol, and also most probably for making sugar. Also you could roast the butt of the agave and then give it to animals to eat, or even to humans in times of drought. The giant reed, the giant Spanish reed, basically the bamboo of the Mediterranean, was introduced by the Spanish. As you can see, together with pine wood and palm fronds, it's been used for building the roofs and basically everything else. Let's see what else they have here. The older trees are definitely remnants of the old farm, of the old homestead here. However, a lot of the new things, well, we cannot be sure how traditional they are. Well, I will not film in detail the half-restored farmhouse. Actually, I think this was maybe the stable. There must have been some wealth here, because they had a two-story house covered with tiles, so they must have had. They must have made some money here, despite all their poverty. Here an oven in front of the house. So I guess those were the stables for goats and donkeys and stuff. Down in the valley, in the caves, there are still some cave dwellings and some stables and stuff. So I guess this could have been a small community of 4 or 5 homesteads, 4 or 5 farms. But I cannot be sure of that. Well, here's some aloe vera, very important for sunburn, cuts and bruises. Some geranium, which is tight. Wow, if the geraniums actually can tolerate more drought than most cacti, but I guess here it's a little bit too, yeah, there is not enough soil to catch enough water. Well, the dragon fruit cactus here is not really a traditional crop of the Canary Islands, but it didn't stop someone from trying to plant it here. grapes. Unfortunately, I missed the grapes and the birds got them. We had a very early and very early and very short fruit season here. So I missed out pretty much on all the fruit. No cactus fruit, unfortunately, for me. No mangoes on the mango trees. Yeah, there are a couple bananas, but those are not ripe yet. Maybe in a couple days or weeks, if I come back, they will be ripe enough for me to harvest. No avocados on the avocado trees. There is some ginger relative in the background. Well, on the other sides, they have also some carob, where I harvested a couple rock hard but tasty pots. They had, well, there are some attempts to grow mangoes and avocados and lemongrass over there, and also cacti. A couple ancient olive trees down there. The Canary Islands are not famous for olive production, and olive oil was imported from Spain, but especially in such remote areas, the poor farmers would have a couple olive trees. There, another olive tree. Yeah, so I'm really fascinated by those remote Canary Island farms. For us, they are basically situated in the most beautiful areas. Imagine waking up every morning and seeing those giant mountains around you, and basically never meeting other people than your family in your life, except if you leave the place where you were born. Seeing this every day, I guess for us it's really beautiful. For them it must have been a very hard life, but still better than being close to the government, and to civilization, and to all the oppression. Yeah, so folks, tell me if you want to see more videos about such little farms in the remote valleys of Gran Canaria and other Canary Islands. Apart from that, stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful island of Gran Canaria. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.